My name is Rahul Pophali. I am from India and I play the tabla.
My first question to you is about the instrument. Is it known how long tablas have been around as an instrument?
Well, the tablas as an instrument have been around for last around 300 years or so.
Uh huh. Yeah.
And before that, there was a instrument called pakhavaj that was popular in Indian music. And the pakhavaj is basically a big single barrel shaped drum, which sounds similar to what tabla sounds now, but it has more bass tones, and that has been there ever since the beginning of Indian classical music. So it is said that the pakhavaj was modified to create the tabla,
Uh-huh.
and then there were some changes done to it, and finally we have the tabla in its current form today.
Um, well, and of course we need to know the name of the different drums. It's not just called tablas, are they? They're divided
Yeah,
into two.
it is essentially a two-piece drum. The left drum is the bass drum, and the right one is the treble drum. So the right one is called tabla, and the left one called as dagga,
Uh-huh.
and the both together, the set also is called as tabla.
Yes.
So tabla, dagga, and the set together tabla also.
Yeah, and you're using different strokes on the different drums.
Yes,
as
yes.
well.
So there is a complete technique on producing different notes and sounds depending on which part of your finger you strike on which part of the tabla.
Yeah.
So and that produces a different sound.
We'll touch on that later on as well.
Sure.
And for now, would you tell us something about the different parts of the tabla, the actual body
Yes,
and so on?
sure. The tabla, the right drum, is made of wood. So, as you can see, the shell, it's a wooden shell which is hollow till around 3/4 of its height from top. And the left one is a metal drum. It could be bronze or copper. Generally, it is coated with steel plating,
Yeah.
but it could be copper, bronze, or even aluminium,
Uh-huh.
and it's hollow throughout. Now the heads of the tabla and the dagga both are made of goat skin.
Yes.
It's goat leather that is used to make this. And you can see there are three parts: the outer ring, the middle one, and the center black circle. So the outer one is called as kinar.
Yes.
Kinar, which in Indian language Hindi means like a boundary. So this is the kinar. This is called as law, and this is the syahi, the center black circle. Same on the left as well. Just that you would see the syahi is perfectly at the center on the right one, and it is a little off center on the left drum. That is because of the playing technique is so.
Yeah.
On the left one, you rest a part of your forearm or the hand on the dagga, and then you play it this way. And you can also modulate the sound by varying the pressure of your wrist,
Yes.
like.
Oh yes, that's
And so on and so forth. So the syahi, it's made of several components. It has maybe around 12 or 15 different components, including some metal powders, manganese and iron powders also, which is made into a thick paste and then laid in circles, in concentric circles, one on top of the other. And then the thickness of the syahi is adjusted in such a way that it's the thickest at the center and it goes thinning as you go towards the edges of the syahi.
yes.
So the syahi gives the tabla different tones that you get here, here, and all different parts of the tabla head actually. Also, it gives tabla the sustain.
Right. Does it
Yeah.
actually lower the tone of the whole instrument as well when you add the material on? If you compare to it not having it at
Yes, yes, it lowers the tone considerably,
Yeah.
and it also gives it the sustain.
Uh-huh.
So if there was no syahi, then probably it would sound something like
Right.
maybe something like that.
Right.
So the pitch would be high, but there would be no sustain.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the pitch, the tablas are made. They are manufactured to be tuned to a particular pitch
Right.
or a particular note. So, for example, this is tuned to G, so it's a G tabla, and this one, the smaller one, it's it's on E or D sharp. So the note to which the tabla head is made to, you are supposed to tune the tabla only to that particular note.
Yes.
At the most, you could tune it half a note lower or half a note higher. And the note of the tabla depends on the diameter of the tabla head and also the thickness of the syahi.
Yeah.
So the higher the note of the tabla, the lower the diameter. Like this is a sharper tabla,
Yeah.
and this is a lower pitch. So this, you can see that this is a smaller diameter,
Yeah.
and this has more diameter. So that is one difference. The syahi goes thinner as you go higher pitch. For the lower note tablas, the syahi would be quite thick.
Yeah.
So that's about the heads, and then these heads are held in position using this single leather strap. It is called as baddi or wadi in India, and it's just one long strap that is woven up and down through the extension of these heads, and then finally it is tied at the bottom in circles, and then there is a knot here
Yes.
which kind of holds it tight in position. So then you see these wooden pegs.
Yes.
These are used for tuning the tablas.
Yeah.
So the wooden pegs kind of they regulate or modulate the tension
Yes.
that exists on the head of the tabla.
Uh-huh.
And we typically use a tuning hammer to tune the tablas.
Yes.
And just to demonstrate, the wooden pegs are used for coarse tuning. You could also do some tuning by striking this extension of the tabla's head.
Yeah, the fine tuning.
The fine
of it,
tuning,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
So if I hit it from top, then the note goes higher. If I strike it from bottom like this, then the
Yeah,
note lowers.
it goes lower. Yeah.
And if there is lot of difference in the note that it is playing and the note I want to tune it to, then I would use the wooden pegs like
Yeah.
this. I would strike it from bottom to top to loosen it, and then maybe from top to bottom to tighten it.
Yeah. And of course,
And
to
so on
get
and so
a clear note, you need to make sure that every peg is tightening. It's tightened even all the way
Even,
around
yes,
the string.
yes,
Yeah.
that is very important because it's just one membrane. It's one skin. So you need to tighten it equally on all sides
Yes.
to get a clean note.
Yes. Often when you see tabla players playing together with others, you also hear them use vocal sounds. Could you
Yes.
tell us a bit about that? What's it called and what does it do? And
Yes. In the tabla system, to recite a composition orally is called as padhant.
yeah.
Padhant. That's the name given to that procedure of reciting it orally. So every stroke or every sound that I make on the tabla, there is a way to replicate that sound orally. For example, na, tita, kat, tin, dhagena tin. So I combine those sounds to make phrases.
Yeah.
Dhagena tin, gena dhagena dha, dhati dhagena dhage tina gena, and so on and so forth. So I'm basically saying it's a language associated with the instrument. So when I learn tabla, I learn these basic strokes and how to say them orally. And in my mind, I associate, okay, when I think of na, this is the movement my fingers have to do. It's like learning a language.
Yeah.
When we learn English, we learn the basic alphabet, the letters of alphabet, and then we combine them to make words, and then statements, and then essays or stories.
That's right. And this is the way you learn all Indian classical compositions.
On the tabla.
You never have like a paper with sheet music on it or anything like that.
No, we do not have sheet music, but we could write down the notes in the tabla bowls. We call it as bowl.
Yeah.
These
Bowl
are-
is the actual syllables of
Yes, the
yeah.
syllables that you play or say on the tabla. It's called a tabla bowl.
Yeah. That's really interesting. You've already shown us some different syllables and the corresponding beats. Roughly, how many do you think there are?
There are around 15 to 16 different notes or different strokes, sounds you can get out of the tablas. Some played only on the right hand, some played on the left, and some a combination stroke of the left and right together.
Yeah.
Like dha or din, so on.
Yeah, yeah. And then, of course, once you start to try and learn things about Indian music, you hear the word tals. Could you tell us something about that? What is that about? What is a tal?
Tal is basically a time signature.
Yeah.
So it's a particular arrangement. It's a particular arrangement of beats, and it has several attributes like the total number of beats in the cycle, and then those beats are divided into sections.
Yeah.
And so a tal is defined by how many beats it has, and then how those beats are divided into sections, and then also there are some beats that are emphasized and there are beats that are not so emphasized, which are denoted on hand by claps and waving your hand aside.
Yeah.
And that is called as tali and khali
Yeah.
in the tabla system. So for example, I would just demonstrate one of the most popular tals in tabla, which is called teen tal. It's a 16 beat rhythm cycle, and it's divided into 4 sections. So now the beginning of each section is either denoted by a clap, which we call as tali, or khali, by waving your hand aside. So, and the remaining beats in the section would be denoted by the fingertips touching on your palm,
Yeah.
one for each beat. So teen tal structure is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 1 again.
Yeah.
So 16 beat cycle. So that's the tal. And we also have something called as theka associated with a tal.
Yes.
So theka is just a standard set of syllables or strokes to be played on the tabla to represent a particular tal. Like the theka of teen tal is dha, din, dha, dha, din, dha, dha, tin, ta, din, dha, and dha again.
So would you be playing that if you were if someone else was playing a solo on sitar, you would sort of comping doing that, and then
Yes.
you would put in maybe some solo phrases in between and or play solo. But as long as comping, you would play that particular teka.
Yes.
set of
Yes. So
beats.
in a typical Indian instrumental music recital, say if it's sitar and tabla playing together,
Yeah.
so the sitarist will be playing a melody, which will be set to a scale, which is the raga
Yeah.
of the melody, and it will also be set to a tal, to a rhythm cycle. So there are two aspects to the music that is being played. There is raga and there is tal. So the tal, if it is set to teen tal, then I mean, if I am accompanying him on the tabla, I would primarily be keeping the reference of teen tal, like dha, din, dha, dha, din, dha, dha, din, dha, dha, din, dha, and dha again. So I would be playing this while he is improvising. But then there would be turns where I play a solo and the sitarist would keep on playing the melody
Yeah.
for me to solo on top of it. So there would be a musical interaction that keeps going on.
Yes. Yes. You're absolutely not a comping instrument. It's just as much a solo instrument as a comping.
Yes,
instrument.
in
Yeah.
Indian instrumental music, yes, it is. It plays quite an important role, and it makes the overall presentation interesting.
Yes.
If there is a musical dialogue between the sitar and the tabla, or any other instrument and the tabla.
Indeed, yes. Well, let's see here. Do you have any idea of how many different tals there are in?
Well, there are hundreds of tals
Yes.
that exist, and but the most popular ones or most commonly used ones are around 10 or 11 of those, which are more common.
Yes.
Like teen tal, which is I just played.
Yeah.
The 16 beat rhythm cycle. It's one of the most popular tals in Indian music.
And we were discussing before the shoot how what's most likely that people have heard, and you said Tintal would be very likely if anyone had heard classical India music.
Yes, yes, of
And
course.
but
Tindal.
if we would were to go to a movie from India, a Bollywood movie, what would you hear then?
Oh, in a Bollywood movie, you would probably hear Keherwa,
Yeah.
Keherwa or Dadra, which are more folk-like rhythms.
Yeah.
And I would just play some Keherwa for you.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'll play it on this one. So that's
Oh, yes.
Keherwa. And Keherwa has several versions because, like I said, there is a theka, standard set of strokes associated with each tal,
Yes, yes.
which is called as theka of the tal.
Uh-huh.
So Keherwa has many thekas. Depending on the song with which you are playing, you would typically modulate the theka of Keherwa.
Uh-huh.
You might play something like. So that's also a form of Keherwa or something like. So on and so forth. So that's
Yes. Ah.
Keherwa.
Ah. So it's a style of playing as well as a set of.
Yes, you
Yeah.
could just say that.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Well, one final question on this with
Sure.
tals and bowls. If a young player studies a Western instrument like the drum kit or something, but in India, would he be ever using this system on the drums, do you think?
Uh, he can.
Yeah.
He can use it. Maybe not the compositions as is directly, but apart from the compositions and the tals, the Indian approach to rhythm is something that could be beneficial. The tabla way of looking at rhythms and timings and different time signatures and the tabla way of approaching it could be very helpful in learning any percussion or rhythm instrument.
Yes.
So you could, he could try that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's definitely very complex rhythms going on, and so on. So we are really keen to learn more about that. We'll do that in the workshops as well,
Sure.
and have some exercises.
Yes.
I know that you have that, so that would be great. Well, another question is we've talked about playing together with sitar and so on, but does tabla players ever do solo recitals or solo concerts? Just play themselves?
Oh yes, they
Yeah.
do. So tabla solo is quite popular form of performing in Indian music,
Right.
and there is a whole repertoire on the tabla to be played solo.
Ah, right.
And it's basically when a student or a person learns tabla, he learns to play it. The compositions or the approach is to learn to play the tabla solo, and then to learn application, applying pieces of it or bits of it into different accompaniment. When you accompany instrumental music, or when you accompany vocal music, or when you accompany the classical dance.
Yeah.
So it's all accompaniment of the tabla solo or some section of tabla solo.
Yes.
So yes, they do play tabla solo, and there is a melody accompaniment when
Yes. Even
you
when
do
you
a
play
tabla
solo. Uh-huh,
Yes,
yes.
yes. So now the role of the melody accompaniment is to keep a reference of the cycle in which the tabla solo is being performed.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So if I'm playing a tabla solo in teen tal,
Yeah.
then the melody would be set to 16 beats.
Yes.
It is called as lehera.
Uh-huh.
Lehera or nagma
Yeah.
is the name given to the melody which is played as an accompaniment to tabla solo.
Yeah.
It is typically played on instruments like sarangi or violin or harmonium.
Uh-huh. Yes.
So those are the instruments you would play.
Uh-huh.
Or these days you also get electronic accompaniment modules.
Oh,
like,
yes,
like
I've
this
seen
one.
you
So
have brought
I have
something
one
with
here.
you. Yeah.
So So that's a 16-beat melody,
Uh huh.
and I could play on top of